I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking.
Good. This is People of the State of Michigan versus Joseph Bartha, docket number 19-960FH. This is the time set for sentencing, actually the reset time. There is a bench warrant we'll have to address at some point, which is what brought Mr. Bartha here. The original sentencing date was June 8th, and Mr. Hess, we have a pre-sentence report, or maybe it was June 18th, I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, June 8th. We have a pre-sentence report that's dated March 18th. Are you okay with proceeding to sentencing on that? With what I'll make whatever corrections or updates you need me to make to the pre-sentence report.
Yes, Your Honor. The only correction, I suppose, would be jail credit, since my client was...
Yeah, I already made that. Hang on, we'll get to that.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Bartha, are you okay with us doing the sentencing remotely from the jail instead of bringing you over here to the courthouse?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, thank you. So you were convicted of 2 counts of larceny, $200 to $1,000. Those are each misdemeanors, each punishable by up to 1 year in jail. And as you've seen, Mr. Hess is here, your attorney representing you. And then back to the pre-sentence report, Mr. Hess, I estimated, I think 13 days credit. Does that sound right?
Yes, Your Honor.
I think that's I've just spent 8 days in
26th,
jail.
I showed you were picked up on the 26th, so I added that time onto the credit. And that was your only update, Mr. Hess?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, there of course are no guidelines because these are misdemeanors. Did the people have any corrections, updates, additions, deletions to the report?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
And was there a victim who wished to be heard?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then did the people wish to be heard?
Only, Your Honor, that I did speak to all the victims on this case before the plea was entered. They were in agreement with it, and we asked the court to follow the recommendations in the pre-sentence investigation report.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hess.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'm hearing a lot of noise. I guess that must be from the jail.
Yeah, I'm going to give your client a chance to speak in a moment, so I don't want to mute him and then have to unmute him because it's not that easy.
Okay. All right, looks like Mr. Bartha closed the door. Thank you.
Good idea, Mr. Bartha. Thank you.
I'm really thankful.
Thank you, Your Honor. Of course, my client is already aware of what I'm going to say, and I believe the people are aware of it, which I think is the reason this case ended up as a misdemeanor resolution. Mr. Bartha is not, as far as I can tell, a danger to society or anybody who intends to commit crimes. He is somebody who suffers from a medical condition where his body's unable to produce sufficient testosterone for him to function. This takes away unfortunately, his motivation, his energy level, his ability to get things done. The only real treatment for this condition is consistent dosing with testosterone. But because of some of my clients' lack of motivation plus mental health issues and inability to keep appointments, he's, I believe, been excluded or kicked out of treatment with the doctor's office he was trying to get treated at. So he's unfortunately not been able to keep up on his medication regimen. He is in the process of applying for disability, with the idea being that could at least get him an income coming in and he would be able to devote himself full time to his medical treatment. That hearing was postponed due to the COVID-19 crisis. I believe Mr. Bartha has another hearing coming up, if my notes are correct, next month. So in October, says my client. So Mr. Bartha, unfortunately, in this situation, the plea was entered because he should have known that these were fraudulent checks. He says that he didn't know 100% that they were fraudulent, but he just should have known. Mr. Bartha is somebody who had been living in very meager and sparse accommodations, had been working odd jobs, had disability applications that had been rejected and was really having a hard time making ends meet. He was approached by some individuals who had befriended him, and I think they saw him as an easy mark. Mr. Bartha has, he used to, have a credit history, job. He's got a driver's license. At the time, he had an MSU Federal Credit Union bank account, and I think these people took advantage of him, knowing that they could try to run these checks through his account. They told Mr. Bartha that he was helping doing payroll for a landscaping company. Turns out that all these checks were stolen, some of them by drug-addicted family members of people with checking accounts, some of them perhaps through break-ins. My client wasn't tied to any of these instances of stealing. He's simply the person who passed the checks at the MSU Credit Union. In fact, he ended up being arrested after he presented himself to the MSU Credit Union in what he says was an effort to help solve the problem and figure out the situation and why these checks were bouncing. But ultimately, since he's the one who was passing the checks, he's the one who had to take responsibility in this case and did end up pleading, and I'm very grateful that the prosecutor's office agreed to a misdemeanor resolution for this case. Mr. Bartha was taken advantage of by these people, and unfortunately his medical situation is such that he's an easy mark for unscrupulous people. Your Honor, I do understand the recommendation of the probation department, which is 12 months probation. However, I think that my client will have an extremely difficult amount of extreme difficulty with complying with probation, considering that he has difficulty keeping appointments. I would respectfully ask that the court sentence Mr. Bartha to fines and costs. However, finding that my client is indigent as a disability applicant, I would ask the court sentence Mr. Bartha to restitution. I would ask that any probation supervision be either non-reporting or as minimal as possible. I do understand that Mr. Bartha is taking accountability for this and does deserve some degree of punishment. However, I believe that time served in jail is already sufficient punishment. So I would ask that instead of a supervised probation, that any penal action taken by the court be limited to 13 days incarceration with 13 days time served, understanding that if the court wants to enforce collection of the roughly $1,500 in restitution, Mr. Bartha will either have to be put on probation with a payment plan, or I know that there's a bench warrant process for enforcing payments, but I'm not sure that's always the most efficient way to get these things done. So I guess I would ask for my client to be sentenced to time served, Your Honor, with an appropriate amount of supervision, with the goal of that supervision being Mr. Bartha paying back this money from the bad check. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bartha, is there anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I thought the whole time that I was working for a legitimate company, and never once thought that I was passing bad checks. It's true, I had a disability hearing scheduled, and that's been pushed back to October, and I've been told it's likely that I'll get approved on the first go around because I've got so many problems. And I have agreed to pay the bank back the money that was taken from them. I'll need some time to do that, but yeah. And I really would hope that you'd see it in your heart. Just let me go today.
All right, thank you. Well, I understand the argument that a probationary period is going to be problematic here. And I don't want to set Mr. Bartha up to fail, having him do a whole bunch of things that he's really not capable of doing. But to ask that he not be on probation and get out today, I think is a bit of a stretch. But these are 2 misdemeanors, and they are property offenses, so I don't think a lengthy sentence of any kind is called for, but I think there has to be some sanction. I did not take this plea with Mr. Bartha telling me he's totally innocent, because I couldn't have taken it, and I didn't. But I will compromise of sorts, and I think that it's appropriate to do away with the probationary period, and I will sentence you to 30 days in jail with credit for 13 days served. You do have to pay $75 to the Crime Victims Fund, $100 in state costs, and restitution in the amount of $1,545.89 to MSUFCU, and I will waive costs because I believe that the defendant is indigent. And Mr. Bartha, you have the right to file an application for leave to appeal your conviction and your sentence in this matter. You're entitled to an attorney at public expense to assist you in doing that. If you are making a request for one, you have to make it within 14 days of today's date. We will send you a form that tells more about that, and the bench warrant is dismissed. You had a question, Mr. Bartha?
Yes, I was hoping, I'm having a really tough time with the jail that I've already served, okay? And I think that I'd be more, I'm not being set up for failure by asking for a probationary period rather than jail time. I'm actually having a really hard time dealing with the jail sentence that I already have.
I've already sentenced you, Mr. Bartha, I've already sentenced you. I'm not going to change it. And in fact, 30 days with credit for 13 is a minimal jail sentence, as I have
And I'm
not
thankful for that.
prohibited any kind of early release or good time whatsoever. So you will find that actually it is not even close to 30 days. So that will conclude our hearing on this matter. You can tell them at the jail that you're all set.
Thank
And
you.
that I'm free to go today?
No.
Yep.
You're just done with your hearing.
Is there any way, ma'am?
No, Mr. Bartha, and you're lucky I just dismissed the bench warrant without any further sanction for that.
I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Good luck.